America just wrote the biggest check in its industrial history. $52 billion to win the chip war. But as we sit here in 2026, the massive factories in the Arizona desert are standing half empty. Not because we lack the money, but because we lack the people to run them and the electricity to turn them on. Today, we look at the silicon paradox. Is the CHIPS Act the savior of the U.S. economy or the most expensive mistake of the decade? In 2022, the United States signed a check for $52 billion. The goal? To bring the world's most advanced manufacturing back home. They called it the CHIPS Act, a master plan to build Gigafabs, temples of silicon that would secure America's future against a rising China. But as we stand here in 2026, the dream is vibrating against a cold, hard reality. The machines are ready. The money is spent. But the lights, they aren't coming on. Meet the power wall. The invisible bottleneck that no one in Washington accounted for. Inside these walls, we aren't just making chips. We are manipulating matter at the atomic level. To do that, a single gigafab requires a constant, unwavering stream of electricity. Not just a little, a lot. A modern megafab consumes upwards of 100 to 150 megawatt hours every single hour. That is the same amount of power needed to light up 50,000 homes. One factory, one small city's worth of energy. In 2026, the American power grid is a victim of its own success. We are witnessing a triple threat demand spike. First, the AI gold rush. Massive data centers are popping up like mushrooms, each pulling gigawatts to train the next generation of LLMs. Secondly, the EV mandate. Millions of electric cars are plugging in, straining local transformers to the snapping point. Thirdly, the chip resurgence. These new factories are the final straw. The crisis has become so acute that the world's tech titans have stopped waiting for the government. They've gone off-grid. Microsoft, Google, and Meta aren't just software companies anymore. They're becoming nuclear power operators. In a desperate bid to keep the servers humming, Microsoft has moved to resurrect the dormant 3 Mile Island nuclear plant. Google is betting on small modular reactors, SMRs, effectively building private mini-nukes to bypass the public grid entirely. But while the software giants buy up reactors, the CHIPS Act factories are stuck in the interconnection queue. This is the DMV of the energy world, a bureaucratic purgatory where projects wait an average of 5 years just to get permission to plug into the high-voltage lines. $52 billion bought the factories, but it didn't buy the spark to ignite them. Without a radical overhaul of how America generates and moves power, these gigafabs won't be the engines of a new economy. They'll be the most expensive ghost towns in history. America wanted a chip war. It got a power struggle. You can buy the land. You can build the shell. You can even buy the power. But a gigafab is not an automated vending machine. It is a living, breathing organism that requires thousands of high IQ minds to keep it from crashing. And right now, America is facing a brain drain before the brain even arrives. The math is brutal. By 2030, the U.S. semiconductor industry is projected to face a shortage of nearly 67,000 workers. We aren't just talking about PhD-level physicists. We're talking about the missing middle. The technicians who maintain the EUV lithography machines and the specialized engineers who oversee the chemical baths. Out of the total 3.85 million jobs in the broader tech sector, the specific niche of semiconductor manufacturing is a ghost town. Nearly 58% of new jobs created by the CHIPS Act are currently at risk of being left unfilled. Nowhere is this crisis more visible than at TSMC, Arizona. The Taiwanese giant, the world's undisputed king of chips, brought its blueprint to the American desert. But they didn't just find a shortage of workers. They found a culture shock. Construction slowed to a crawl. Why? Because the U.S. lacked a specialized pipeline of workers who knew how to install the miles of ultra-high purity piping these fabs require. To save the schedule, TSMC did something that sent shockwaves through American labor unions. They flew in 500 specialist workers from Taiwan. The friction was instant. American workers pushed back against the grueling 24/7 work culture expected in Asian fabs, while TSMC management grew frustrated by local safety protocols and training delays. It became a multi-billion-dollar standoff, American labor versus East Asian efficiency. This leads to a haunting question. Can American universities produce engineers fast enough to keep these $50 billion investments from becoming ghost factories? For decades, the brightest minds in Silicon Valley flocked to software. They wanted to build apps, social media, and AI. Hardware, the grueling, high-stakes world of physical silicon, was seen as old tech. Now, the U.S. is sprinting to pivot. Programs at Purdue, Arizona State, and Ohio State are being flooded with CHIPS Act funding to reskill the workforce. But a master's degree takes years. A PhD takes a decade. The factories are being finished now. The workforce won't be ready until tomorrow. If we build it, will they come? Or have we built monuments to a workforce that simply doesn't exist? In the world of semiconductors, patriotism is a powerful word. But in the world of Wall Street, margins are the only word that matters. America has the land. It's building the factories. But it hasn't solved the most dangerous variable in the equation, the math. The brutal truth of the global economy is that efficiency has a home, and for 30 years, that home has been East Asia. Building and running a fab in the United States isn't just slightly more expensive. It's a financial chasm. Analysts have crunched the numbers. It is roughly 30% to 50% more expensive to manufacture a leading-edge chip in Arizona or Ohio than it is in Hsinchu, Taiwan. From higher labor costs and stricter environmental regulations to the sheer lack of a local ecosystem of suppliers, the Made in USA stamp comes with a massive surcharge. This creates a terrifying dilemma for the titans of tech. Imagine you are Apple or Nvidia. You want to secure your supply chain. You want to be American-made. But if Intel or TSMC passes those 40% cost increases down to you, your hardware suddenly becomes uncompetitive. If an NVIDIA H100 chip, already costing tens of thousands of dollars, gets a US-made price hike, does the AI revolution slow down? If the heart of the next iPhone costs double to produce, does a consumer foot the bill? The fear is that the CHIPS Act might produce the world's most advanced semiconductors that nobody actually wants to buy. While Washington talks about national security, the C-suites in Taipei and Santa Clara are looking at their spreadsheets with dread. TSMC management has already sounded the alarm, predicting a 2 to 3% margin dilution for their U.S. operations. In the high-stakes world of semiconductor manufacturing, where billions are reinvested every year into R&D, a 3% drop isn't just a rounding error. It's a signal to investors to run for the hills. Investors hate shrinking margins. If the American experiment eats into bottom line, the very companies we are subsidizing might pivot back to the cheaper, faster, and more efficient shores of Asia the moment the government check stop cleared. We called it a renaissance. But without a fixed power grid, a ready workforce, or a way to make the math work, the $52 billion dream is starting to look like a collective hallucination. The factories are rising, but the question remains, can America afford the chips it's so desperate to build? The CHIPS Act was never just about economics. It was about a silicon shield. The idea was simple. If America builds the world's most vital technology at home, it can no longer be held hostage by a conflict in the Taiwan Strait. But as we sit in 2026, the shield is looking more like a shadow. The goal was leading-edge independence. But there is a dirty secret in the semiconductor world. Leading edge is a moving target. In 2026, the world's most powerful AI chips, like NVIDIA's Blackwell and the upcoming 2 nanometers nodes, are the crown jewels of the digital age. But look closely at the fine print. While TSMC's Arizona plant has made headlines by producing its first Blackwell wafers, the highest yielding, most advanced versions of these chips are still born in Taiwan. Why? Because the copy-exactly method of manufacturing only works if you have the latest machines. Taiwan typically keeps its most advanced process nodes, the N0 generation, on its own soil for at least 1 to 2 years before exporting the tech to satellite fabs in the U.S. Here is the irony. By the time the massive U.S. Gigafabs reach full-scale production in 2027 and 2028, the chips they produce might already be legacy tech. We are spending billions to build capacity for 4 nanometers and 3 nanometers chips in Arizona. Meanwhile, in Kaohsiung and Hsinchu, TSMC is already moving toward 1.4 nanometers and beyond. Are we subsidized in the future, or are we paying $52 billion to build a world-class museum of 2024 technology? Even when a chip is made in the USA in 2026, it isn't truly independent. The raw silicon die may be pressed in Phoenix, but for most advanced AI processors, those dies are often shipped back to Taiwan for advanced packaging, the complex process of stacking memory and processors together, without the back-end, packaging and testing. Also moving to the US, the silicon shield is full of holes. If the ship stops sailing tomorrow, the American fabs produce half-finished bricks. The $52 billion hallucination wasn't that we could build factories. It was a belief that money alone could recreate 40 years of Taiwanese ecosystem overnight. America has proven it can write a check. Now, it has to prove it can find the power, the people, and the patience to stay in the race. Because in the chip war, there is no silver medal. You are either at the cutting edge or you are obsolete.